The light that filled the council chamber was not Earthlight. It never flickered, never dimmed, never cast proper shadows. It emanated from the crystalline walls themselves, an ancient bioluminescence that predated humanity's first, tentative steps into space. The chamber was a perfect sphere, impossibly vast, with 12 raised platforms arranged in meticulous geometric precision. Each platform hosted a delegation from one of the founding species of the Galactic Council, their forms as varied as the stars they hailed from. Sarah Mills stood alone on the newest, smallest platform, the 13th, Earth's platform. She adjusted the collar of her simple black suit, a deliberate choice that stood in stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garb of the other delegations. Around her, translucent displays hovered, feeding her information in a constant, silent stream. She could feel the weight of alien gazes upon her, some curious, most dismissive, a few openly hostile. The Zephyron delegation, with their towering azure exoskeletons and crystalline sensory arrays, occupied the largest platform. They had been the first to detect the Devourers 3 centuries ago, when humanity was still struggling to establish permanent colonies beyond Mars. The Ixari, gelatinous beings containing billions of specialized organisms in perfect symbiosis, shimmered with internal bioluminescence as they communicated among themselves. The Krillian hive mind, represented by 12 identical bipeds connected by invisible neural pathways, observed her with perfect stillness. The Volari, gaseous entities contained within ornate, mechanized suits, hovered slightly above their platform, as if even touching the same surface as other species was beneath them. And so it went. Around the chamber, 12 species, 12 civilizations that had mapped and colonized the galaxy, while humans were still discovering electricity. 12 species that had been monitoring the approach of the Devourers for 300 years without taking decisive action. Sarah took a deep breath. She had studied each delegation exhaustively during the 18 months since humanity had been grudgingly admitted to the Council. Director Chan and Maya Rodriguez had drilled her relentlessly on protocol, on the intricate dance of diplomacy that had governed these proceedings for millennia. But they had also given her a mission that went far beyond observation and polite integration. "Council is now in session," announced a disembodied voice, neither male nor female, the AI moderator that had overseen these proceedings since the Council's inception. Day 7642 of Devourer monitoring. The chair recognizes the Zephyrin Admiral. The tallest of the Zephyrins inclined its upper body in acknowledgement. When it spoke, its voice was a harmonic cascade, translated instantly by the neural implant at the base of Sarah's skull. The Zephyrin Conclave has analyzed the most recent long-range scans of the Devourer fleet. We detect no significant deviation from projected courses. The estimated time of arrival in Council space remains 43 standard years, with a margin of error of approximately 8 months. The Admiral's sensory array pulsed with faint blue light. We recommend continuing observation protocols and maintaining current defense preparations. The same recommendation they had been making for 300 years, Sarah thought. The same recommendation that had been approved unanimously at every session. The same recommendation that would be approved today, unless she intervened. "The chair recognizes the Ixari Collective," the AI announced. The largest of the Ixari pools rippled, forming a temporary vocalization apparatus at its surface. "The collective concurs with the Zephyrin assessment. Our simulations indicate that current defensive measures will be 99.8% effective in containing the Devourer threat upon arrival." Sarah suppressed a smile. The Ixari had been claiming 99.8% effectiveness for decades, even as their own data showed diminishing returns. They were, perhaps, the most complacent of the Council species, their billion-year civilization having outlasted countless threats through sheer patience. The procession continued around the chamber, each delegation offering minor variations on the same theme. Continue watching. Continue waiting. Continue preparing according to the established protocols. Sarah's fingers tapped a silent rhythm against her thigh as she waited for her turn. This was the moment 18 months of preparation had been building toward. The chair recognizes the human delegation, the AI finally announced. A hush fell over the chamber, more profound than the respectful silence that had greeted the other delegations. This was the silence of curiosity, of skepticism, of 12 ancient species wondering what possible contribution the galactic newcomers could make to a discussion that had been ongoing since before humans had built their first spacecraft. Sarah stepped forward, her movements deliberate and unhurried. "Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady. "Humanity acknowledges its recent arrival to this august body. We recognize that our civilization is young compared to yours, our technology less advanced, our understanding of the galaxy still in its infancy." She paused, allowing the translation to ripple through the chamber. Several delegations shifted in what she recognized as their species' expressions of approval. They expected humility from humanity. They expected deference. They were about to be disappointed. "In light of our limitations, we have approached the devourer threat with the understanding that we must compensate for what we lack in technological sophistication with pragmatic innovation." Sarah's voice remained measured, but she allowed a hint of steel to enter it. "We have reviewed the Council's 300 years of devourer monitoring data. We have studied the defense preparations. We have analyzed the simulations and projections." She took a single step forward, to the very edge of Earth's platform. "And so I must ask a question that, to human perception, seems fundamental to this discussion." The chamber grew quieter still, if such a thing were possible. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed to fade away. "Has any of this actually worked?" The question hung in the air like a physical thing, sharp-edged and dangerous. For several heartbeats, there was no response. Then, a ripple of movement spread through the delegations, the alien equivalent of shifting uncomfortably in one seat. "The human delegation is reminded of protocol," the AI moderator intoned. "Questions during council proceedings must be directed to specific delegations and must pertain to factual matters, rather than subjective assessments." "I appreciate the reminder," Sarah replied, not breaking eye contact, or whatever passed for eye contact, with the Zephyrin Admiral. "Allow me to rephrase. According to the Council's own historical data, the predicted effectiveness of defensive measures against the devourers has decreased by approximately 7% per decade for the past 3 centuries. The devourers have demonstrated adaptive capabilities that have consistently outpaced the Council's defensive innovations. Is this assessment factually accurate?" The Zephyrin Admiral's sensory array flickered rapidly, a sign of agitation. "The data is accurate, but the human delegation's interpretation lacks context. The Council's approach has always been one of careful, measured response. We do not act hastily." "Careful and measured," Sarah echoed. "Those are admirable qualities. Humanity has often suffered from their lack." She tapped a command into her console, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. "If I may, I'd like to present a brief review of the Council's handling of recent galactic crises." Before any objection could be raised, the hologram shifted to display a ringed gas giant, surrounded by mining installations. "The helium-3 shortage of galactic year 8500. The Council spent 47 years debating resource allocation, while 3 systems experienced complete industrial collapse." The hologram changed again, showing a densely packed urban center engulfed in a strange, shimmering field. "The quantum plague that affected the Volari colonies in the Sagittarius Arm. 94 years of quarantine protocols, while research initiatives were stalled by funding disputes." With each example, Sarah could see the increasing discomfort spreading through the delegations. These were not proud moments in the Council's history, but neither were they secrets. They were simply facts that were rarely discussed in such direct terms. What the human delegation fails to understand, the Ixari representative interjected, its voice a burbling cascade, is that these timescales are appropriate to the complexity of the problems. Rushed solutions create more problems than they solve. A valid perspective, Sarah acknowledged with a slight nod. Humanity has certainly made catastrophic mistakes through hasty action. But we've also developed a certain expertise in crisis management, precisely because we lack the luxury of time. She tapped another command, and the hologram transformed into a rotating image of Earth. When a 30-kilometer asteroid was detected on a collision course with Earth in 2079, we had 8 months to respond. We didn't have the technology to destroy or significantly alter its course. Our solution was imperfect, a network of 500 nuclear detonations that fragmented the asteroid into manageable pieces. The resulting debris caused significant damage to our orbital infrastructure, but Earth survived. The hologram shifted again, displaying a chaotic swirl of weather patterns. When climate change threatened to make large portions of our planet uninhabitable, we implemented geoengineering solutions that we knew carried significant risks. Some failed spectacularly. Others succeeded beyond expectation. We adapted. We refined. We persisted. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each delegation in turn. Humanity does not have the technological prowess of the Zephrins. We lack the collective intelligence of the Krillian hive mind. We cannot match the computational capabilities of the Ixari. But we excel at one thing: solving impossible problems with imperfect solutions before time runs out. The Volari representative's mechanized suit emitted a harsh, metallic sound that Sarah's translator rendered as a dismissive laugh. "And this is why you were admitted to the Council? To teach us how to embrace mediocrity?" "No," Sarah replied calmly. "We were admitted because the Council recognized, perhaps unconsciously, that after 3 centuries of perfect observation and planning, you need a species that understands urgency." She tapped a final command, and the hologram transformed once more, now displaying a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with a pulsing red mass at its edge. The Devourers. For the past 18 months, while acclimating to Council protocol, humanity has been conducting our own analysis of the Devourer threat, Sarah continued. With the Council's permission, I would like to share our findings. The Zephyrin Admiral's sensory array pulsed rapidly. The human delegation was granted access to observation data for the purpose of familiarization, not independent analysis. Nevertheless, Sarah replied, we have completed such an analysis, and Council Protocol Section 47, Paragraph 16, permits any delegation to present relevant data during crisis assessment sessions. There was a moment of tense silence before the AI moderator spoke. The human delegation is correct. Presentation of relevant data is permitted. Sarah didn't wait for further discussion. The holographic display expanded, zooming in on the Devourer fleet. Unlike the elegant ships of the Council species, the Devourer vessels were asymmetrical, seemingly chaotic constructions that appeared to be constantly reconfiguring themselves. The Council has been monitoring the Devourers for 300 years, tracking their systematic consumption of resources from system after system. The prevailing theory has been that they are essentially sophisticated autonomous harvesting machines, following programmed patterns to gather materials for unknown creators. The hologram shifted, displaying side-by-side comparisons of Devourer vessel configurations over time. Our analysis suggests something different. We believe the Devourers are not simply following programming. They're learning, adapting, evolving. A murmur spread through the chamber as the delegations observed the subtle but undeniable patterns in the evolutionary changes of the Devourer vessels. Furthermore, Sarah continued, We've detected communication patterns between devourer vessels that suggest a form of distributed intelligence. They're not just machines. They're a collective mind, sharing information and adapting based on shared experiences. The Krillian hive mind representative stepped forward, its 12 identical bodies moving in perfect synchrony. If this is true, why has the Council's analysis not detected it? With respect, Sarah replied, because the Council's analysis has been looking for patterns that match known forms of intelligence. The Devourers represent something new, or at least, something outside the Council's extensive but ultimately finite catalog of encountered intelligences. She expanded the holographic display further, highlighting energy signatures emanating from the Devourer fleet. These emissions were categorized in Council records as waste byproducts of the Devourer's resource processing. Our analysis suggests they're actually communication signals, encoded in a method that bears no resemblance to any known communication protocol. The Zephyrin Admiral's sensory array had gone completely still, a sign of intense focus or alarm. If the human delegation's analysis is correct, this would significantly alter our strategic approach. It would invalidate it entirely, Sarah corrected gently. The current defense plans assume predictable behavior patterns based on fixed programming. If the Devourers are a learning, adaptive intelligence, they will analyze and counter any static defense. What would humanity propose instead? The question came from an unexpected source: the Myriad Convergence, a collective of plant-based intelligences that rarely spoke during Council proceedings. Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment everything had been building toward. We propose dissolving the Council's unified defense strategy entirely. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds, movements, and electromagnetic emissions, the various species' expressions of shock, outrage, or confusion. Order, the AI moderator intoned, its voice rising above the din. The human delegation will clarify its proposal. Sarah waited for the chamber to quiet before continuing. The Council's strength has always been in coordination, in the elegant integration of 12 different technological approaches into a unified whole. But against an adaptive intelligence, this uniformity becomes a weakness. The Devourers will need to analyze and counter only one approach, no matter how sophisticated. She gestured to the 12 delegation platforms surrounding her. Instead, we propose 12 different, contradictory, even chaotic approaches. Let the Volari deploy their quantum field technology in one sector. Let the Zephyrins establish their gravitational defense perimeter in another. Let the Krillian hive mind implement their psychic disruption barriers elsewhere. And humanity, the Exari representative burbled. What would Earth contribute to this disorganized defense? Sarah smiled thinly. Unpredictability. While the Council has been observing the Devourers for 3 centuries, humanity has been fighting itself for most of its history. We've developed an unfortunate expertise in asymmetric warfare, in guerrilla tactics, in fighting against technologically superior forces. She tapped her console, and the holographic display shifted to show a series of small, unremarkable vessels. These are what we call fire ships, sacrificial vessels packed with destructive potential. In Earth's naval history, they were literally set on fire and directed into enemy fleets. We propose a more sophisticated version, ships designed to appear vulnerable, to attract the Devourer's attention, but containing technologies specifically designed to disrupt their communication patterns. The Zephyrin Admiral's sensory array flickered with what Sarah had learned to recognize as skepticism. The Council cannot abandon 3 centuries of careful planning based on 18 months of human analysis. Of course it can, Sarah replied simply. That's what leadership means, the willingness to change course when new information demands it. She looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each delegation in turn. I understand the resistance. The Council was created to prevent precisely this kind of unilateral action, to ensure that no single species could drive galactic policy. It's a noble ideal, But the devourers don't care about our ideals. They are coming. They are intelligent. And they are adaptive. Our only hope is to be more adaptive than they are." The chamber fell silent again. But this time the silence had a different quality. Thoughtful. Heavy with the weight of decision. The Volari representative was the first to break it, its mechanized suit emitting a series of sharp, staccato sounds. The Volari Concord formally withdraws from the Council's Unified Defense Initiative. We will implement our own measures to protect our systems. Before the shock of this announcement could fully register, the Exari representative's surface rippled dramatically. The Exari Collective also withdraws. We cannot continue to participate in a strategy that our own analysis now suggests is fundamentally flawed. One by one, delegation after delegation made similar declarations. The Krillian hive mind, the myriad convergence, the quantum plurality, the luminous consciousness, the void communion, the temporal syndicate. 8 species, centuries-old members of the most stable political alliance in galactic history, formally withdrawing from a cornerstone initiative in the span of minutes. Sarah stood motionless on her platform, her expression carefully neutral, even as her heart raced. This was beyond what she or her superiors had anticipated. They had hoped to influence the Council's approach, to carve out a role for humanity in the defense preparations. They had not expected to shatter the alliance entirely. The Zephyrin Admiral's sensory array was pulsing so rapidly now that it appeared to be a solid, brilliant blue. The human delegation cannot possibly comprehend the magnitude of what it has done here today. 3 centuries of careful diplomatic work, undone by a single question from a species barely out of its planetary cradle. "With respect, Admiral," Sarah replied. "It wasn't the question that undid anything. It was the answer. Or rather, the lack of one." The Admiral's massive form seemed to stiffen. "The Zephyrin Conclave remains committed to the Council and its principles. We will not abandon our responsibilities so hastily." "Nor will the Ashra Dominion," added the representative of the crystalline beings that had maintained an enigmatic silence throughout the proceedings. 2 more delegations, the Nexus Gestalt and the Photonic Communion, also affirmed their continued commitment to the Council's approach, though with notable reservations. 4 species remaining loyal to the Council out of 12. A catastrophic diplomatic failure by any measure, or a breakthrough, depending on one's perspective. "The chair notes the formal withdrawals and commitments," the AI moderator announced, its neutral tone at odds with the momentous nature of what had just transpired. "Given the unprecedented nature of these developments, this session will adjourn for a period of reflection and consultation. The Council will reconvene in 7 standard days." As the delegations began to disperse, many casting what Sarah interpreted as reproachful glances in her direction, she activated one final holographic display in the center of the chamber. A simple countdown timer, showing 43 years, 12 days, 7 hours, and 36 minutes. "This is how long we have," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber despite its size. "This is how long until the Devourers arrive in Council space, based on our latest projections. Whether we face them as a unified Council or as independent species is less important than that we face them effectively." She gestured to the timer. "Earth's first act as a Council member will be to establish this countdown in a public space in every major settlement in Council territory. A reminder that while our civilizations may measure their histories in millennia, our future is measured in decades." The Zephyrin Admiral paused at the exit to the chamber, its massive form silhouetted against the crystalline archway. "You have destroyed something precious today, Ambassador Mills, something that may prove irreplaceable." Sarah met the Admiral's gaze steadily. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I've cleared the ground so that something new can be built, something more suited to the threat we face." "We shall see," the Admiral replied, its translated voice heavy with what might have been resignation or might have been resolve. We shall see what grows from the seeds you have planted today. As the last of the delegations departed, Sarah remained alone on Earth's platform, watching the countdown timer tick inexorably forward. The enormity of what had just transpired washed over her. She had done exactly what she had been sent to do: disrupt the complacent bureaucracy of the Council and force a more dynamic approach to the Devourer threat. But the cost had been higher than anyone had anticipated. She tapped her communication implant, establishing a secure channel back to Earth. Director Chan, this is Ambassador Mills. The situation has evolved beyond our projections. We're receiving the preliminary reports now, came the reply. Director Chan's voice tense but controlled. 8 withdrawals? That's significantly more than we anticipated. The Council's unity was more fragile than it appeared, Sarah replied, watching the timer continue its relentless countdown. Once one delegation broke ranks, the others followed quickly. They've been looking for an excuse for decades. And the 4 that remained? The Zephyrins, predictably. The Ashra, surprisingly. The Nexus Gestalt and the Photonic Communion, all powerful, all with significant military capabilities. Not the worst possible outcome, Director Chan mused. What's your assessment of next steps? Sarah considered the question carefully. The 8 who withdrew will implement their own defense strategies, as we hoped. They'll be watching each other and us closely. The remaining Council members will need to restructure their approach, now that they've lost over half their resource base. And humanity's role? Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the countdown timer. We've positioned ourselves as the catalyst, the species that asks the uncomfortable questions. That's a role we can continue to play. But we also need to demonstrate that we can do more than just criticize. We need to implement our fireship strategy immediately, with or without Council support. Understood. I'll take it to the Security Council today. There was a pause before Director Chan continued, his voice softer. The diplomatic fallout from this will be significant. Sarah, you may have made some powerful enemies today. Better enemies who are actively preparing for the Devourers than friends who are complacently awaiting destruction, she replied, thinking of the Zephyrin Admiral's parting words. Besides, the Council species think in centuries. They don't hold grudges the way humans do. By the time the Devourers arrive, today will be ancient history to them. Let's hope we all live long enough to test that theory, Director Chan said dryly. Return to Earth for debriefing as soon as possible. We have 43 years to prepare, and I intend to use every minute. Understood, Sarah replied, ending the transmission. She remained in the empty Council chamber for a long moment, alone with the ghostly blue glow of the countdown timer. 43 years. To a Zephyrin or an Exari, barely the blink of an eye. To humanity, nearly half a century. Time for an entire generation to be born, grow up, and come of age under the shadow of the approaching threat. But also, time to prepare, to innovate, to build, to fight. Time that would not have been used effectively if the Council had continued on its path of endless observation and theoretical defense planning. As she finally turned to leave the chamber, Sarah felt a curious mixture of dread and hope. The Council had fractured. Yes. But perhaps that fracturing was necessary, like the breaking of an ancient dam to release the pent-up energies of 12 of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The Devourers were coming. They were intelligent, adaptive, and relentless. But now, at least, they would face an enemy that was no longer bound by consensus and caution. They would face species fighting for their survival in a dozen different ways, with a dozen different technologies, employing a dozen different strategies. And among them would be humanity, young, brash, imperfect, but unafraid to ask the questions that needed asking and to act when action was required. The timer continued its countdown as Sarah departed. 43 years, 12 days, 7 hours, and 35 minutes. Not much time, by galactic standards. But perhaps just enough, by human ones.